Matthew Alexander Falder was born on October 24, 1988, in Knutsford, Cheshire, England. His early life was characterized by academic excellence and a seemingly normal upbringing, which stood in stark contrast to the dark path he would later follow. Falder grew up in an upper-middle-class family. His parents, by all accounts, provided a stable and supportive home environment. The family was well regarded in the community, with no outward signs of dysfunction that might have hinted at Matthew's future deviant behavior. From a young age, he demonstrated exceptional intellectual abilities. He attended King's School in Macclesfield, an independent day school with a strong academic reputation. At King's School, Falder quickly distinguished himself as a top student. Teachers and peers alike noted his sharp mind and aptitude for learning. He excelled across various subjects, showing particular promise in the sciences and mathematics. This excellence was not limited to his grades alone. He was also known to participate in various extracurricular activities that showcased his intellectual prowess. He took part in various academic competitions, further cementing his reputation as a gifted student. There were no reports of Falder being socially isolated or exhibiting any obvious signs of the dark tendencies that would later come to light. By all accounts, he appeared to be a well-adjusted teenager, capable of maintaining friendships and participating in normal social activities. This ability to blend in and appear ordinary would later become a crucial factor in his ability to lead a double life. After completing his secondary education with top grades, Falder's academic journey continued at one of the world's most prestigious universities. In 2007, he was accepted to Clare College at the University of Cambridge. Clare College, founded in 1326, is the second oldest of Cambridge's 31 colleges and has a rich history of producing notable alumni in various fields. At Cambridge, Falder chose to specialize in geophysics, particularly focusing on seismic oceanography. It's a complex and challenging area of research that requires a high level of analytical skill and scientific understanding. During his time at Cambridge, Falder continued to excel. He earned both his master's and doctoral degrees from the university, further establishing his credentials as a promising young scientist. It was during his university years that the first signs of Falder's deviant behavior began to manifest, though they went unnoticed at the time. In 2007, the same year he started at college, Falder engaged in voyeurism by secretly filming his university housemates in their shared bathroom. This act, which would later be revealed as part of his criminal activities, marked the beginning of his descent into increasingly serious offenses. Despite this hidden behavior, he maintained a facade of normalcy and success. He was described by peers as being extroverted, funny, and larger than life. This charismatic exterior allowed him to build a network of friends and acquaintances who had no inkling of his secret activities. As he progressed through his studies, he continued to build an impressive academic resume. After completing his doctoral studies, Falder's academic career continued to flourish. He secured a position as a postdoctoral researcher and lecturer in geophysics at the University of Birmingham. This role allowed him to continue his research while also sharing his knowledge with students. To his colleagues and students, Falder appeared to be a dedicated and talented academic, passionate about his field of study. His position as a lecturer also meant that he was in regular contact with students, a fact that takes on a sinister aspect in light of his later convictions. From 2009 onwards, Falder's criminal activities escalated significantly, transitioning from voyeurism to complex online exploitation and blackmail schemes. His modus operandi became increasingly sophisticated, targeting vulnerable individuals through various online platforms. His method of selecting victims was calculated and predatory. He would search online marketplaces like Gumtree for advertisements posted by young people looking for part-time work or quick cash. This approach allowed him to target individuals who might be in financially vulnerable positions. Once he identified potential victims, Falder would initiate contact using a variety of false personas. He primarily posed as a female artist named Liz, but also used other aliases such as Jess and Shona. These fabricated identities were designed to appear non-threatening and to build a trust with his victims. He offered money, sometimes hundreds or even thousands of pounds, for nude or partially clothed images, claiming they would be used for art projects. This initial approach was a crucial part of his this strategy, as it allowed him to obtain compromising material that he would later use for blackmail. After receiving initial images from his victims, Falder would reveal his true nature. He would threaten to share the photos with the victim's family, friends, or school unless they complied with increasingly degrading demands. This sudden shift from a seemingly benign interaction to aggressive blackmail was a hallmark of Falder's approach. His demands escalated rapidly, forcing victims to perform increasingly humiliating and abusive acts. These included forcing victims to eat dog food, making them lick toilet seats and use tampons, compelling victims to hold signs with degrading messages, coercing them into self-harm, and more. In one particularly heinous case, Falder blackmailed a victim into eating his own feces and drinking urine. However, these images were not only for personal use. Falder shared them on dark web forums, particularly those focused on hurtcore content, which is extreme and sadistic material involving the abuse of children. He used various online aliases on these forums, including 666 Devil, Evil Mind, and In the Garden. On these platforms, he not only shared content, but also actively encouraged others to engage in similar abusive behaviors. He offered advice to other on how to evade capture, suggesting they use vouchers to get kids to trust you rather than money. Over the course of his criminal activities, he approached approximately 300 people worldwide. The psychological impact on victims was severe. Many suffered long-term trauma, with at least 3 victims attempting suicide as a result of Falder's actions. Others reported self-harm and ongoing psychological distress. He also installed hidden cameras in various locations, including public toilets, to secretly film people. In a twist of irony, Falder inadvertently filmed himself while setting up some of these hidden cameras, which later became evidence against him. Among the 137 offenses Falder admitted to, some of the most egregious included encouraging the rape of a 4-year-old boy, blackmailing a girl he knew to be only 14 years old, stating online that he would willingly mentally f her up, and that he didn't care if she lived or died, coercing a victim into filming herself licking toilet seats, a used tampon, and eating dog food. On another occasion, he even encouraged a father to rape his own son, who was only a couple of years old. The investigation and eventual arrest of Matthew Falder was a complex, multi-year operation involving law enforcement agencies from multiple countries. The investigation into his activities, codenamed Operation Kakam, began as early as August 2013. The FBI first alerted UK authorities about suspicious activity on dark web forums, particularly a site called Hurt to the Core. This initial lead sparked what would become one of the most complex and challenging investigations undertaken by the National Crime Agency in the UK. In April 2015, the investigation gained significant momentum when the NCA began investigating an account on a dark web forum under one of Falder's aliases. This user had posted a picture of a young girl he claimed was his daughter and was requesting ideas on how to torture her. This disturbing behavior caught the attention of investigators and became a focal point of their efforts. After years of painstaking investigation, a breakthrough finally came in March 2017. Intelligence gathered by the task force linked a person of interest to an address in Birmingham. This crucial piece of information narrowed the focus of the investigation significantly. In April 2017, Matthew Falder was officially identified as the primary suspect. Once he was identified as the suspect, he was placed under covert surveillance for 3 months. This period of surveillance was critical for gathering additional evidence and ensuring that authorities could build a strong case against him. During this time, Falder was observed in various settings, including being filmed on trains while using his laptop. This surveillance provided valuable insights into his daily routines and activities, helping investigators plan the most effective way to apprehend him. On June 21, 2017, the culmination of nearly 4 years of investigation came to a head. Plainclothes officers were deployed to capture Falder, targeting his workplace at the University of Birmingham. The arrest was carefully timed and executed to catch the culprit off guard. Falder was handcuffed in his office at the university. Upon arrest, when presented with the list of offenses he was suspected of committing, Falder reportedly remarked that it sounded like, quote, the rap sheet from hell. This comment, made during his arrest, would later be cited as evidence of his awareness of the severity and extent of his crimes. Immediately following the arrest, 2 of Falder's devices were seized by the NCA. These provided what the agency called significant evidence. The digital forensics performed on these devices revealed that Falder's offending dated back to 2009 when he was a 21-year-old student. Shortly afterward, authorities raided Falder's home in Harborne Park Road, Edgbaston. The search revealed a living space that was described as chaotic and student-like. Investigators found an untidy bedroom with laundry, old pizza boxes, and coins scattered across the carpet. More importantly, they discovered a desktop computer and laptop surrounded by drawers of tools and masses of wires stuffed into bulging plastic containers. These devices, like those seized at his workplace, contained valuable evidence, often protected by double layers of encryption. Falder was questioned by police over 3 days following his arrest. During this period, he largely refused to comment on the allegations against him. However, he did admit to controlling the Evil Mind account, which, if you recall, was one of his many online aliases. Matt Sutton, a senior investigating officer for the NCA, described the incident as a watershed moment for forces working to catch online pedophiles. Sutton stated, "In more than 30 years of law enforcement, I've never come across an offender whose sole motivation was to inflict such profound anguish and pain." Matthew Falder reveled in it. He also noted the extreme complexity of the investigation, given Falder's technological savviness and ability to hide in the darkest recesses of the dark web. In October 2017, he pleaded guilty to 137 offenses against 46 victims, making him one of the most prolific convicted sex offenders in the UK. His guilty plea came after months of careful preparation by prosecutors who had to navigate the complex legal landscape surrounding crimes committed in the digital realm. On February 19, 2018, Falder's sentencing hearing took place at Birmingham Crown Court. The proceedings were presided over by Judge Philip Parker QC, who had the difficult task of determining an appropriate sentence for such a wide-ranging and severe set of crimes. The court was told how Falder had coerced male and female victims, many of whom were vulnerable individuals, into performing degrading and abusive acts. Judge Parker described Falder as an internet highwayman who was warped and sadistic, and whose behavior was cunning, persistent, manipulative, and cruel. The judge noted the stark contrast between Falder's academic achievements and his, quote, extraordinary offending, stating that no one who knew you above ground had an inkling of what you were doing below the surface. After considering all the evidence and impact statements, Judge Parker sentenced Falder to 32 years in prison, with an additional 6 years on extended license. This sentence was one of the longest ever handed down for this type of offense in the UK. The judge concluded that Falder was a dangerous offender, which influenced the structure of the sentence. The extended license period meant that even after serving his prison term, Falder would remain under strict supervision for an additional 6 years. However, the legal proceedings did not end with this initial sentencing. In October 2018, the case was brought before the Court of Appeal in London. His defense team, led by barrister Andrew Smith QC, argued that the 32-year prison term was manifestly excessive. After careful consideration, the Court of Appeal, led by Lord Justice Holroyd, agreed to reduce Falder's prison sentence. The court concluded that the appropriate custodial term, taking into account credit for Falder's guilty pleas and the principle of totality, was 25 years. However, while reducing the prison term, the appeal judges increased Falder's extended license period from 6 to 8 years. Igor Irtyshov, born on August 16, 1971 in Krasnodar Krai, Russia, became one of the most notorious serial killers and child rapists in Russian history. His case shocked the nation due to the extreme brutality of his attacks on young boys in St. Petersburg during the 1990s. Igor's childhood was far from ideal. He was born into a dysfunctional family, with both of his parents struggling with chronic alcoholism. This environment of substance abuse and neglect had a profound impact on the young Igor. The constant presence of alcohol in the household created an atmosphere of unpredictability and emotional turmoil, leaving lasting scars on his psyche. The extent of his mother's alcoholism was particularly severe. Even during her pregnancy with Igor, she was unable to abstain from heavy drinking. This prenatal exposure to alcohol likely contributed to him being born weak and sickly, potentially setting the stage for future developmental issues. The effects of fetal alcohol syndrome can include physical, behavioral, and learning problems, which may have played a role in Igor's later struggles. As he grew, the challenges he faced only intensified. His childhood was characterized by a constant struggle for survival, with basic needs often going unmet due to his parents' addiction. A pivotal moment in Igor's young life occurred when he was just 7 years old. His father, unable or unwilling to cope with the responsibilities of parenthood and his own addiction, abandoned the family. This desertion left the boy and his mother to fend for themselves, further exacerbating their already dire situation. Education, which could have potentially provided some structure and opportunity for Igor, was not a priority in his chaotic home life. School attendance was sporadic at best, with the child rarely present in the classroom. This lack of consistent education would have significant repercussions on his future, limiting his opportunities and potentially contributing to his social isolation. The most dramatic and life-altering event in Igor's childhood occurred when he was 10 years old. He was involved in a catastrophic car accident that would change the course of his life forever. The impact of the crash caused severe damage to his brain, resulting in a moderate intellectual disability. Medical professionals who examined him following the accident were pessimistic about his prognosis, claiming that the damage was permanent and that his condition would never improve. This TBI would have far-reaching consequences for Igor. They can affect various aspects of cognitive function, including memory, attention, decision-making, and impulse control. In severe cases, they can also lead to changes in personality and behavior. The frontal and temporal lobes of the brain, which are particularly vulnerable in such accidents, play crucial roles in emotional regulation, social behavior, and moral reasoning. Following the accident, Igor's behavior became increasingly erratic and difficult to manage. His mother, now faced with caring for a child with special needs, found herself unable to cope with the situation. Ultimately, she made the decision to send her son to a boarding school for children with disabilities. This decision effectively severed the already tenuous bond between mother and son. Once Igor was placed in the boarding school, his mother cut all ties with him, showing no further interest in him. The boarding school proved to be a cruel and unforgiving place. Instead of finding care and understanding, Igor was relentlessly bullied and abused. The older and stronger individuals at the school took sadistic pleasure in tormenting him. Igor, with his frail and slender frame, was an easy target for the bullies. He endured frequent beatings, unable to defend himself against his larger and more aggressive tormentors. But the cruelty didn't stop at physical violence. In one particularly horrific incident, Igor's tormentors went so far as to solder his flesh. Perhaps the most devastating aspect of Igor's time at the boarding school was the sexual abuse he endured. It was reported that he was raped by older students during his time at the institution. Each passing day at the boarding school seemed to chip away at his spirit. The combination of physical abuse, emotional neglect, and sexual trauma created a perfect storm of adverse childhood experiences. These experiences have been shown to have significant long-term effects on mental health, increasing the risk of depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and even criminal behavior in adulthood. Following his graduation from the boarding school, he went on to attend a vocational school where he learned carpentry. This period might have represented a glimmer of hope for Igor, a chance to acquire skills that could lead to stable employment and a better life. However, the damage done during his formative years proved difficult to overcome. Upon entering the workforce, Igor struggled to maintain steady employment. His work as a carpenter was short-lived, and he found himself forced to take on what he considered menial jobs to make ends meet. He worked as a milker, a cleaner, and a cook, but none of these positions provided the stability or satisfaction he sought. Driven by a desire for a better life and perhaps hoping to escape the painful memories of his past, he made the decision to leave for Moscow. This represented a fresh start, a place where he could potentially reinvent himself and find the opportunities that had eluded him thus far. But Moscow proved to be an unforgiving environment for someone with Igor's background and limitations. The city's fast pace and competitive job market were challenging for Igor, who lacked the skills and education to secure stable employment. He struggled to find work and often went hungry, living on the margins of society. Unable to integrate into mainstream society and desperate for a sense of belonging, he found himself drawn to the fringes of Moscow's underground scene. It was during this time that he reportedly began engaging in gay prostitution as a means of survival. This work, while providing some income, likely exposed Igor to further exploitation and potentially dangerous situations. Despite the hardships he faced in Moscow, he reportedly had a brief romantic relationship with a male conductor. This relationship, while short-lived, may have represented one of the few positive interpersonal experiences in his life up to that point. It was this conductor who eventually helped him relocate to St. Petersburg. In St. Petersburg, Igor initially found work as a dishwasher at the Pegasus Coffee House, which was known to cater to a gay clientele. This job, while modest, provided some stability and placed Igor in an environment where he may have felt more accepted. However, he was noted for his hysteria, egocentrism, and cowardice. Something to note is that despite his involvement in prostitution and his work in a gay-friendly establishment, Igor reportedly did not consider himself gay, as he also had sexual relationships with women. This confusion about his identity is said to be another source of internal conflict for Igor, adding to his already complex psychological profile. Igor's criminal activities began in December 1993, and his first documented attack occurred in Sosnovsky Park. He targeted two brothers aged 11 and 12 who were walking through the park. Approaching the children with a knife, Igor threatened them and led them to a secluded area. Before assaulting them, he forced the boys to drink an unidentified liquid from a jar. The victims later described the substance as having a strange taste and an unpleasant smell. The assault on the two brothers was brutal, resulting in serious injuries to both victims. This first known attack already displayed the extreme violence that would become Igor's hallmark. The fact that he targeted two victims simultaneously also showed a level of confidence and aggression that would only intensify in his subsequent crimes. Following this attack, Igor's crimes escalated rapidly. In February 1994, just 2 months after his first documented assault, he committed his first murder in the Kolpinsky district of St. Petersburg. The victim was a young boy whom Igor and then accidentally killed by strangulation. In his later statements, he claimed that he had not intended to kill the boy, but had, quote, miscalculated his strength due to being intoxicated at the time. In May 1994, he committed another horrific attack. Igor lured a 10-year-old boy to the attic of a building on Riga Avenue. After brutally the child, Igor manually tore the boy's perineum, causing permanent disability. Despite the high-risk nature of his actions, he consistently carried out his assaults during daylight hours, typically between noon and 6 p.m. This brazenness suggests either a high level of confidence in his ability to evade capture or a compulsive nature to his crimes that overrode caution. In the following month, June 1994, Igor's criminal activities continued unabated. He assaulted two more boys aged 11 and 12 on the banks of the Neva River. The final phase of Igor's crime spree occurred in September of the same year, marking the peak of his violence. On September 29th, he attempted to attack a 15-year-old boy in an elevator. However, this potential victim managed to fight back and escape. This failed attempt seemed to enrage Igor, leading to his most horrific crime later the same day. Frustrated by his earlier failure, he targeted 9-year-old Konstantin Kuzmin, who was returning home from school. Igor followed the boy into his apartment building and attacked him in the elevator. He strangled the child until he lost consciousness, then dragged him to a utility room. After assaulting the unconscious child, Igor committed an act of unimaginable cruelty. Using a sharp hook, he literally disemboweled the boy. Remarkably, despite the severity of his injuries, Konstantin initially survived this brutal attack. The child regained consciousness and managed to crawl back to his apartment, where his mother found him. The boy's survival and ability to provide a detailed description of his attacker were crucial in the eventual capture of Igor. The brutality of this final attack galvanized both the public and law enforcement. A massive manhunt was launched, with Igor's description widely circulated. Composite sketches based on victim descriptions were distributed through various media channels, including newspapers and television broadcasts. Law enforcement agencies conducted background checks on all registered offenders in the area and interviewed numerous potential witnesses. One key piece of evidence came from a young woman who reported encountering the perpetrator and noted a distinct scent of a popular aftershave called Black Dragon. As the investigation progressed, Igor became aware that the net was closing in on him. Recognizing his own likeness in the widely distributed sketches, he fled to Murmansk in an attempt to evade capture. There, he dyed his hair to alter his appearance. However, this period of flight was short-lived. Perhaps believing that the immediate danger had passed, Igor returned to St. Petersburg. Then, on November 28, 1994, Igor was finally captured. One of his roommates played a crucial role in his apprehension. After the final attack, Igor had brought home the victim's school bag and boasted about it to his roommate. Suspicious of this behavior, the roommate reported Igor to the police. The arrest brought an end to a 10-month period of terror in St. Petersburg. In total, Igor was accused of violating 15 articles of the Russian Criminal Code. He underwent extensive psychiatric examinations to determine his mental state. Despite his attempts to feign insanity, he was ultimately declared mentally competent to stand trial. Due to the extreme nature of his crimes and the risk of public outrage, Igor's trial was held behind closed doors. Initially, the man was sentenced to death for his crimes. However, in 1999, following Russia's accession to the Council of Europe and a moratorium on the death penalty, Igor's sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. After his sentencing, he was detained in the Mordovian Zone Special Regime Colony in Sosnovka, Mordovia. Igor's behavior in prison was reportedly erratic, with other inmates describing frequent episodes of hysterical laughter, screaming, and prolonged crying. Igor died in February 2021 while serving his life sentence. The cause of death was reported as heart failure.